First of all, it is truly an honor sitting in front of the doyens of cardiology of India, Professor Banerjee, Professor Chakrabarti, and Professor Hazra. And I've admired you all along. You know that. And I wish we had planned it little better. I would have come to Calcutta first and then gone to Shanghai from here. And I could have been with you on the way to Shanghai. But regardless, I'm honored to be here, and I'm a little surprised that Prakash ji gave me this particular topic when the other speakers are talking about science, and I'm kind of talking about my life. I really would like to talk about my life, but I don't want it to be any kind of a prescription or want to say that I've done better than anybody else. Or, I mean, it actually humbles me more than it gives me a chance of putting my few years of life and present it to you. And do not take it as I just hope I don't offend anybody. I'm not prescribing anything. I'm just trying to put together some of my experiences here, and I would love to present it to you. And every single slide that I have presented here, I have put in a reminder or a note to myself as to what have I learned from every experiment of my life. And I would want you to criticize it, critique it, and take some of it and modify for yourself. And do let me know if there is something I could have done better. But as my tribute to the biggest cardiologist that our country has produced, Professor B.C. Roy, to whom this is the tribute of the West Bengal chapter for the 75th year celebration of Cardiology Society of India. So the title, there is a disclaimer here I've taken from a very decent book of Priscilla Bruce Oya Banumi, a Nigerian author who lives in the United States now, The Journey of 30 Years, Lessons for Life. So I'm also trying to put together my journey of 30 years in cardiovascular medicine and research. What are the lessons for my life? And I'm not trying to be prescriptive to anybody. It's the lesson for myself. And I have written down and recounted those lessons for myself. So just trying to say, more than 65 years ago, I was born in Ajmer. And this is the house where I was born in, on the left upper panel. And the beautiful city with the Lake Anasagar and Bajrangadi and Dargah Sharif. And at the age of 6, my father and so the family had moved, and grandfather, the family had moved to Jaipur, where I did my initial schooling and also went to medical school in Jaipur. There is something one always remembers in life, and that is, when do you hit the first mentor in your life? And I was incredibly lucky from that perspective, and I think that is what made the foundation for my life. And there was Mr. Kashmir Singh Katyar, who was my 6th grade homeroom teacher. And so he basically picked out 10 people from the class, thinking that these people will do very well in the boards or the board examination in secondary and higher secondary. And how did he start contributing to their life and career was that he would come to our home in the morning and wake us up. I was the first one to be woken up at 3 a.m. every single day from 6th grade, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th. Every single day, 3 a.m. There was no Saturday. There was no Sunday. There was no winter vacation. There was no summer vacation. Every single day at 3 a.m., he woke me up. And then he went and woke other 9 people up. And in the 10th grade, 6 of us had made it to the top 20, I being 6th. And he was so excited that he did it for the higher secondary also. That was the 11th grade. He continued to come to our place at 3 a.m. I topped, and I was the only one in the list. Whenever I go, I would bow to him. I would touch his feet in Jaipur, but he would say that he needed to thank me because he wanted to do an experiment, and I made the experiment successful for him. That's a mentor. And I cry whenever I think of him. I'm incredibly lucky that after having come to this country also, I've had multiple of them: Dr. Haber, Dr. Braunwald, Fuster, Strauss, Zaret, Bildek, Ka, and my original mentors from India, Dr. Bhatia, Dr. Tandon, and Srinath Reddy. Uh, the more I thank them, less it is. Uh, this is something which is to be passed on as a baton. You need to do the same what you got. So search for a good mentor, relentless search for a good mentor and a productive lab is extremely important. And the inheritance sometimes can be environmental. I have had multiple of fellows in my life. 45 of the fellows have come to me from Japan. 23 of them have won the Young Investigator Awards. And they now carry out something what is called Fan Jam, fellows associated with Narula's lab from Japan annual meeting. 13th meeting is to take place, annual meeting next year in March in Japan. This is the fulfillment. This is what it is. How did the life start? I made it to the Technology Institute, something which I really wanted to do. And when I came home on that evening, by receiving that letter of my admission, everybody was excited that he's going to go to become the nuclear physicist. And when my grandfather, whom I loved the most and who loved me the most, who is what has been my inspiration all through my life, came home. He was a lawyer, came home in the evening and saw that everybody was happy. The cake was on the dining table. The cake was to be cut. And he says, what is it all about? And it was that Jagat got what he wanted. And his answer was nuclear physics. I thought my grandson is going to be a cardiologist. All the plans were changed. I had to re-enter for my pre-medical tests and all. And next year, my medical journey started, and I became a cardiologist. So an ounce of destiny and a pound of 10 pounds of labor. So it was quite an amazing journey. First year of my medical school, my aunt, who was chief of cardiology at Jaipur Medical College, quite a lot of you might remember her, Dr. Amrit Khalsa, passed away about 15 years ago with colon cancer. She basically was going to go to Salgrenska in Gothenburg for her fellowship because she wanted to prepare for her DM entry into CMC Vellore. And 1 year she wanted to do it outside. She wanted to redo all medicine and cardiology at that time. Quite a lot of time had passed since she had done her MD. And then those were the times when people just could read the electrocardiogram, and that was cardiology. So I had just joined my first year of medical school. She said, what do you do after your dissection hall? I said, I go and play my badminton. I was a badminton player, quite a good badminton player. And so I said, I go to badminton court. She says, you are not doing that. You are coming home every evening after your dissection hall at 6 o'clock, and you will read Friedberg to me. And we need to finish that. So, okay, why are you not reading it yourself? Oh, I fall asleep now. I'm 50 years old. I'm not in that frame of mind. So, first year of medical school, I did not even know where the humerus or femur was. And I started to read Friedberg. In 3 months, I finished Friedberg. She really got a taste of it. And she said that she wanted me to read Hearst to her. And this was the Hearst, second edition, as you can see here on the left-hand side, the heart from Willis Hearst and Bruce Locke. And I read this entire book to her in my first year of medical school. And she went to Salgrenska after that. And who knew I would end up editing the 50th year edition of Heart, and now the next edition as well. American College of Cardiology has been great to me, has given me a lot, probably way more than I deserved. Jack Imaging editor in chief first, and then the executive editor of Jack, and also being called in the 2012 conference the innovator of cardiovascular medicine. I'm eternally grateful to the destiny, to the God, and to my grandfather who thought of me being a cardiologist. If I have to redo my life, would I go to nuclear physics? I did nuclear cardiology quite a bit, but no, I would continue to have the same trajectory that I would like to have the same trajectory. My internal medicine residency at Jaipur Medical College started working hard. During my medical school, I used to run the electrophoretic gels for one of the MD students who was trying to do his MD thesis in the lipid profiles. And so I used to run the gels for him in the evening. And in those days, I had found that the alpha lipoprotein peak in the healthy people was much bigger as compared to those who had coronary artery disease. But we kind of omitted that. We were only focused on the beta lipoproteins because LDL was something which was really being known, not to realize that within the next year or so, the paper from Tall and Small from Columbia came in where the role of HDL was presented. We did write that paper, but we had lost out in the race to them. My MD thesis was on HDL cholesterol in coronary artery disease, obviously, as I would expect. So the early start is a smart start. And then came cardiology fellowship, DM in cardiology, followed by my PhD in cardiovascular immunology at All India Institute of Medical Sciences. I wanted to continue in the same league of cholesterol and wanted to do LDL receptor polymorphism because Brown Goldstein had gotten the Nobel Prize, and I was quite excited about it. Was sitting at Dr. Bhatia's place when I took the proposal to him, and his question was, "Do you want to stay in the country or you want to go abroad?" Answer was, "I want to stay in the country, obviously." Then his suggestion was, "You have to be geographically relevant. Think about rheumatic fever." And uh, not realizing that life would end up in United States, I changed the entire topic, changed the whole focus, and I'm rather proud that we were able to get 4 papers out in circulation from an MD thesis, from the PhD thesis in India in those days when we used to think that publications in those big journals was beyond us. Research became a passion. But why do research? Research is primarily a patient care. The difference is that the rewards to the patient and society could be somewhat delayed. Basic science and clinical medicine are not mutually exclusive. It's a spectrum. It reforms your thinking. It reforms your practice. It makes you a more complete clinician. But the unfortunate part is that I think, I may be wrong here, but I think I'm the only PhD in cardiology from All India Institute in Delhi. Nobody else has taken the initiative after that. I wish there are more people who come forward and do not end just at the clinical training. But as the destiny will have something else in mind, it's not a matter of chance, it is a matter of choice. And my dad had second myocardial infarction when I was I had just joined the faculty at All India Institute. Ejection fraction 23%, 2 arteries completely blocked, third artery circumflex, pre-OM1, 80% occlusion, supplying the heart. Only way was to bring him somewhere which have the good results. He was brought to Texas Heart Institute, never realizing at that time I thought that would I ever be able to work here, not realizing that I would be able to lead the place in Houston. And here is the team, including Dr. Cooley here, 7 vessel bypass, 48-minute pump run only. That is what Denton Cooley was. PET scans from that time. It's one of the best PET centers in the world, run by Dr. Lance Gould. And you can see all the viable myocardium. He returned home in 6 weeks with 65% ejection fraction. Getting excited about it. Here is the OR. Here is the way St. Luke's Hospital used to look like in those days. Does not look like this anymore. It's very different now. It's much more gorgeous building now. This was the OR. And it drew me to Mass General Hospital. Relocated to Mass General in 1989, and then have been at various places, being chief of cardiology at Hahnemann University Hospital, UC Irvine, and then at Mount Sinai. And now the recent move to University of Texas, where I'm the executive vice president and chief academic officer now. So having moved on to the different pastures. When I was preparing for myself, my interest was rheumatic fever. Obviously, rheumatic heart is not seen here. So I thought that the best thing would be to continue my quest in heart failure. And so ended up doing the imaging as well as heart failure and transplantation fellowships here. And as you would see here, this is my earliest of the indulgence and research, that all the proteins in the cardiomyocytes, whichever are soluble in the physiological solution, such as blood, they will wash out when the myocytes lose their sarcolemmal integrity. While those which are not soluble, they remain in situ. And we proposed that if we created the antibody to those, which is like the heavy chain of myosin, we should be able to target the cardiomyocytes which have lost their sarcolemmal integrity, as antibodies will only be able to enter into those cells. And as you can see here, that sarcolemma is intact in the normal cell. While it is losing its way, mitochondrial changes are occurring at the time of myocyte necrosis. And we took the antibodies and coated them onto the polystyrene beads, as you can see here. These are 1 micron beads, and then incubated them in culture with the cardiomyocytes which are subjected to hypoxia. And you will see that they are entangled with the myosin heavy chains here, suggesting thereby that we would be able to target only those cells. So we need to learn well about what we we propose to do in our lives. Here it is, some of the clinical experiments here. Used to spend nights in the labs preparing the antibodies and injecting them in the people who will come with the acute myocardial infarction and are being taken for the intracoronary TPA injections. And those were the people where we injected our anti-myosin antibody. Here you will see an anterior myocardial infarction in the left anterior oblique view. You can clearly see the anteroseptal area is involved. Here you will see in the LAO view that only the posterior area is involved. The lesion was in circumflex. And here in this particular case, the right coronary artery is involved and only the inferior wall is involved. Went and spent 6 months in Barcelona, did hundreds and hundreds of anti-myosin antibody scans, demonstrated that we would be able to even identify not only the localized uptake, but will also be able to define the diffuse uptake, quite like in myocarditis or in transplant rejection. And the first paper came out in New England Journal of Medicine. And that was the reason that I was asked to stay back at Mass General Hospital. Here, I would say that collaboration, efforts to collaborate is extremely important. So exchange of ideas is very powerful when we went and did the transplant rejection and the diffuse necrosis assessment. And also did come back and did the cases at All India Institute, and did it in the rheumatic fever as well. The uptake was not there. Only uptake occurred when there was a huge pericardial effusion, or when there was a gross congestive heart failure, some subendocardial uptake, or that the antibody diffused into the pericardial effusion, and eventually demonstrated that there was no myocyte uptake, there is no myocyte damage. Endomyocardial biopsies I had already done for my PhD thesis clearly demonstrated myocytes are not affected in rheumatic fever, and that is the reason that the function never suffers in rheumatic fever, and that was proving my point. Then you look at those days, the apoptosis had started to emerge as one of the important phenomenon. And I proposed that we should be able to look at the apoptosis in myocardium. Everybody laughed at me saying that, what do you say? Those cells which are not, which are terminally differentiated would never undergo apoptosis. However, some of the cells that we used to see in the interstitium looked like that there was no inflammation, but the cells were being lost. So we started to look at the apoptosis. So focus on the story that your research will tell, and just not on the soundbite or one-time punchline in that particular story. And was that successful? Absolutely, yes. We presented apoptosis in heart failure, another New England Journal of Medicine paper, and that probably is the only thing which probably changed my life. And but there was a lot of criticism. People said that, you know what, this cannot happen. On one hand, New York Times, CNN, the whole day it was that heart muscle cells commit suicide. On the other hand, there was a group of people which opposed this phenomenon, saying that the cells which are terminally differentiated would never be able to um, commit suicide. So healthy skepticism and critical review is good. It is important to be correct than just be the first. And try to demonstrate that, and clearly demonstrated the upstream cascade here, and found that there was a release of caspase, there was a release of the cytochrome C from the mitochondria, and activation of the caspase 3, which created the vacuolation in the cells. But the nucleus was not gone. People would not accept that phenomenon. But not to be bogged down by the dogmas who invented them in the first place. We did that, and we persisted with it. Outstanding proceedings of National Academy of Sciences paper, and clearly demonstrating why would that happen. It would happen because there was a balance in the anti-apoptotic and apoptotic factors. So nature is not complicated. We have made it so. And this was a unique phenomenon that was shown by the cardiomyocytes, leading to us to try and develop the imaging for apoptosis. People had said that this will not be possible because the cell membranes are not lost and you will not be able to see that. But don't be afraid to push the boundaries. And we were able to do that. Beautiful Nature paper. And we were able to demonstrate the reversibility of apoptosis in heart failure as well. So no frustration if results do not support our original hypothesis. Nature is much smarter than us. And there was an editorial with our paper in the Proceedings of National Academy of Sciences, where the editorialist, who is the father of apoptosis in US, wrote that this is a paper of paramount national health importance because it proves that heart failure would be a reversible phenomenon. And that is what we see today. That was the time when I had started to work with Dr. Renu Virmani, who treated me like her son. And she told me that you should give up on myocardium, get to atherosclerosis, where the meat is. So obviously, looking at the proliferating smooth muscle cells, we started to target them. Some excellent papers in PNAS, Circulation, and other places where we are looking at them. And obviously, I am grateful to three pathologists in my life: Dr. Virmani, Arbustini, Luisa Arbustini from Milano, Italy, and then my wife, who is the cardiac pathologist, who have literally inspired me all along, moving along with them. And we tried to characterize the histomorphological features of high risk plaques and started to focus on inflammation. And that was Dr. Fuster's push to me when he came to Mass General Hospital as chief of cardiology and has continued thereafter. Numerous papers, one after the other, at the best of the journals, where we have tried to do the mid course correction and have literally targeted almost everything that happens in atherosclerosis. But the fact remains, we have to identify those people who will live without events and those who will die of the preventable events. And when we need to identify them, we need to find Waldos in our life. And that is where I started to work with the highest of the CT angiography technology, which was being developed in Japan at that time, and started to work with Professor Takeshi Kondo, one of the most thoughtful and brilliant minds I've worked with in my life. And people laughed at me. They told me that you are on a slippery slope. How would you be able to identify vulnerable plaques on CT angiography? But we were able to look at the positive remodeling and the necrotic cores as the two most important features which were present in the high-risk plaques but were absent from the stable plaques, demonstrated 45 times higher likelihood of having an event, 1,000 subjects, 2 years follow-up, and bigger the necrotic core size, more the positive remodeling. Earlier was the event. For 10-year follow-up of 3,000 subjects, we saw high-risk plaques were high-risk plaques, 10 times more likelihood of having an event as compared to the non-high risk plaques. But non-high risk plaques were not as benign as they were at 2 years, suggesting something was happening here also. And not all of the high risk plaques had a problem. Only a part of them, about 18 to 20% of them, would have an event over the next 10 years. So started looking at it. It was the plaque progression, and we realized that presence of plaque progression is the most important thing in the vulnerability of a plaque. And as a matter of fact, at a given time, only 1/10 of the plaques are high risk plaques. 9 times more plaques are non-high risk plaques, and their progression, if occurs over a period of time, and even the likelihood is 1/10, there is a possibility that 50% of the events after 10 years would occur from non-high risk plaques as from the high risk plaques. And at that time, we also demonstrated the relationship that the FFR was determined by both the QCA as well as by the low attenuation plaque, clearly telling us that there is more to the FFR than just the luminal stenosis. And that is what we have just found in our recently published Emerald 2 study, where we have demonstrated that it is the combination of the hemodynamic factors and the morphologic features which determine the problems. And another study, which we just recently published, where we did the 2x2 analysis of the FFR abnormal versus FFR normal and high-risk plaque presence and non-high-risk plaque presence, we demonstrated that it is the combination of the two which determines the actual sinister outcome. And that is probably the only area where the revascularization should be performed. Only FFR abnormality or only high-risk class abnormality should not fall into the indication. And this vehemently denies the results of Prospect 2 and the PREVENT study, which we can discuss if the time permits. Not only that, I just wanted to end with some of the very fun part of our research. As Einstein said, creativity is intelligence having fun. That we started to look at the historical evidence by looking at the calcium scans of the mummies from across the world. These are 3,000 years old, 4,000 years old mummies here. We found what was unexpected, that even in those days, because of their very abundant lifestyle, these people had the evidence of atherosclerosis, and some of the subsistence populations also had the evidence because they were exposed to smoke aggressively, suggesting that it is something similar to indoor smoking or indoor pollution that we are subjected to. Not only that, we ended up with the hunter-gatherer populations of Bolivia, and these people live the lives. They eat once a day. They don't smoke. They don't have any pollution, and they walk about 17,500 steps a day. Their LDLs are always under 70, their blood pressure systolic under always 115, sugar less than 80, and BMI has never exceeded 24. These people have no coronary artery calcium scan. These are the healthiest hearts on the planet. We have not seen coronary calcium in more than 8% of people, and that too under 100 when they are 80 years old, 90 years old, or 100 years old. Here is my most favorite couple. Look at it, 99 years old woman with 85 years old husband of hers. So if they can do it, why we cannot do it? And if we put it all together, that if we look at primary prevention studies of statins, we know that to bring it to zero, we need to have the cardiovascular events to zero. We need to have 55 of LDL. And in secondary prevention, we need to bring it down to 30 LDL, something which has been shown by the intravascular ultrasound studies as well, that if you want the plaque progression to stop, bring it to 70. If you want it to go further down, you have got to be around 30, 40, or 50. And that is something which we see in the animals also, who are born with less than 100 cholesterol, except the humans who are born with more than 200 cholesterol, are not born with, but who develops 200 cholesterol. LDLs of all the animals in the world is lower than their HDL, except humans, where LDL goes way beyond HDL, and except pigs, in whom the HDL falls under the LDL. All the animals have LDL of less than 25 to 30. And we are also born with 25 to 30. And as Dr. Braunwald suggests, and as Dr. Hazra was mentioning, that he insists on it, that at 35, if we started our people on inclisiran, we should be able to prolong the life to 100 so as to decrease the likelihood of having a threshold for an atherosclerotic cardiovascular event, which can be postponed beyond 100 years. So it suggests that if we did that, we should be able to live to 100 without a heart attack. And another major initiative that we have had and which has been blessed by Dr. Braunwald, we say that it is the time to add the fifth pillar to bedside physical examination, inspection, palpation, percussion, auscultation, and insonation. Can we call ultrasound now our stethoscope? Stethos is chest, scope is to see. We should not call stethoscope. We should call it stethophone, and we should call ultrasound a stethoscope. And in India, where we teach our doctors how to do the ultrasound, unlike in the other countries where the technologists do it, I think we are well ready for it. We should be carrying it at home as the cost of these transducers start to decrease. That should become our stethoscope now. As I always say, if you are not an imager, you're not a doctor. So I would like to end by saying that the life is all about a targeted mission, a collaborative strategy. You need to work with people. It is about relentless effort, but with a constant optimism. We need to bring science, we need to bring subjects, and we need to bring society closer together. With my tribute to Professor B.C. Roy, and with the thanks to my wife, who is a cardiac pathologist, my daughter, who is a vascular medicine specialist and a cardiologist at Cornell faculty, my son, who is at Yale, who is starting his cardiology next month, as I just finished his PhD in genomic epidemiology with Dr. Salim Yusuf, and the love of my life, my grandchild from my daughter, who is 4 years old. With that tribute to all and the support of the family, which is extremely important, I thank you all for giving me this opportunity and sharing my life journey. And as I said, that please do not see anything as as me boasting of anything or bragging of anything or beating my chest or saying it. It is just a humble journey and a true representation of what I have learned on day-to-day basis. Thank you so kindly.